I'm going to talk about, let me get my other stuff out of the way on the screen so I have some room to work with. Let me come back in, fresh, and we'll get into Webi. Excel files provide an excellent tool for doing a variety of different things inside of Webi. Number one use is using Excel as literally as a data source. You have a database, Oracle, DB2, SQL Server, doesn't matter, but it stores history. It doesn't store future or projections. How do you get it? What do you do? That's always an issue. So Excel, when it came out in 4.1 SV2, opened up Pandora's box because there's always going to be situations to bring in the Excel file. Other uses of an Excel file for a filter. I can bring in a list of customer IDs, bring in this query number 1, bring in query number 2, go down to the query filter section, point back to the first query, and it treats it like a filter file. That's another good use. Sometimes we use it as a bridge if we have 2 different queries from 2 different sources and incompatible data. We can use a combined Excel file with multiple columns that allows us to link to the left or the right side depending upon which query you're in and so on along the way. But Excel files are just such a powerful feature, and people use it all the time to get special data in for reporting. So what I want to talk about is how you do that, what you have to watch out for in the update. You know, with all the experience I've had working with the product and the presentations and webinars and all that I do, I get more questions on this whole area, whether it's multiple data providers and Excel files as well, and bringing them together, and how do you do it, how do you update, things like that as well. Well, the thing with Excel files, let's assume I have an Excel file out there, which I do, sitting out on my C drive on my machine in a folder, and it's projected data. I need to be able to bring it in for reporting purposes. Well, the problem is I need to create the Excel file outside of Webi, literally standalone, as if it had nothing to do with Webi, as if you had nothing that you were going to do in Webi with it. And then once it's been created, you have to import it. But to do that, you better make sure that the Excel file, basically what I call data silos. First row is a title, and underneath each of the titles is the corresponding data all the way across. No headers, no footers, no titles, no subtitles, all of that's gone. Get your file cleaned up. I've learned from experience when bringing in and working with files, XLSX files seem to be cleaner. Occasionally I run into a format error when I try to upgrade or update an Excel file. XLS is more of an issue, although not a big deal, but I've run into it. And XLSX I never have. So what I need, first thing you need to be able to do is figure out where am I going to put the Excel file. I need to have a place to put it. Everybody knows, and working with Webi 4.2 and 4.3 will be the same as you'll see later on. When I store my files, I have a Documents tab. The Documents tab shows me my local stuff under my documents, and underneath that my favorites and various subfolders, but I also have public folders. And I could put it in public folders if I wanted to as well. Well, you have to look at that Excel file and say who's going to use it, who's going to control it, and do I need to share it? We're going to assume for my example, I'm the only one. But if you want to be able to bring it in and let other people use it as well, then you need to make sure you've got a place in public folders, maybe a subfolder called Excel that's secure. Somebody controls the in and out of the Excel files, so you don't clobber the Excel files coming in as well. So you have to think about it. Another thing you have to worry about is duplicates. I happen to have the one that I always use called eFashion, .xlsx. It's an easy one, and I bring it in. Well, if you were to look right now under my favorites, do I have an eFashion out here already by that name? And if I went into the basic reporting folder, I have an eFashion and an eFashion the second time I brought it in that gave it a left parent, one parent, and so on, all the way down the line. That is a problem. That is an issue. Because later on, when you come back in and you decide to update the document and the corresponding Excel file, it's easy to miss it and not get the right file. So make sure you really do a good job. Maybe unique naming and store stuff in a particular folder. I have an Excel folder here that subfolder I'm going to use. I'm going to import the Excel file for right now, so we'll do a new local document. We'll bring that Excel file specific one in that I want. And if it's a document with more than one sheet, that's okay. We'll be able to create multiple queries, each with a different sheet, as we'll do later on as well. So I'll choose my file. I happen to have it out on my machine, on a drive. Where is it out there on my PC? I have a folder called Stoplights that I like to put things in. It's got all my images for my charting and stuff as well. Where is it? Stoplights, right here. Normally I'd have an Excel file on the somewhere out there that where I would manage all of my Excel files. The rule of thumb is always you create the Excel file outside of Webi and you import it in when it's new. When it's updated, you update it outside of Webi, you do an organize replace to bring it in, and then you be very careful what you do. Refreshing a document, if you don't do it right, will basically clobber the report. So you have to be careful. Here's the Excel file I want, efashion.xlsx. Very simple. We don't need complexity. You don't deal with complex or simple ones as well. Let's make it so it's easier to follow. It's going to bring it in, go down to the right-hand corner here, and I do an add it in. And there it is. There's my new eFashion file that I want to use as a data provider. Now, normally I like to do these up front, but you could have been already in the middle of a new document that you were building brand new. You went to the home button, selected new Webi, or accept new Excel, and you're in the middle of it, and you realize you don't have the Excel file. Stop, go out to your Documents tab, bring it in. It's immediately available, and continue on. You don't have to have the document closed to do this. I'd be careful, but you can do that. So now that we've got it imported, now I can go home and say, let's bring it in and let's talk about what you do to bring it in, what you do to maintain it. I think that for time's sake will give us a good opportunity to at least cover what we need to do today. Bring it in with other queries, could do it in a future session as well. Hit the new button. And there's my universe, there's my Excel, my text files, and so on all the way down the line. We want to pick Excel, assuming that we've got the Excel file out there. It will default to my documents and whatever it sees. I don't really care about that. I know which one I want. I want to go to the Excel file to find it. And there's the Excel file I'm going to use, and I'm going to open it up. Got to make sure it's cleaned up. Got to be cleaned up. Title data, all the way across for the Excel file as you go. And it brings up the custom data provider window. Some of us old timers remember it called the PDP, personal data provider window, very similar. You notice there's technically no real filtering. I've had past conversations with Samuel Polachuk and the crew out in Paris. And one of the requests that we think they're working on is in newer release is the ability to apply a pseudo filter at Excel right here. Would be kind of nice. Instead of having to do it local, almost like having a global query filter like functionality. Notice first row contains column names. We want that. And if all goes well, my Excel file should come up and it brings up a pseudo query panel. I call it a pseudo. We think typically of a query panel or when we're dealing with Excel or with universes, but we're dealing with Excel. So it doesn't follow the normal mold, as you might say as well. But it's got quarter, month, and projected revenue. The data preview still works even though it's Excel. The only thing we don't have is we don't have the filter capability there. And we can do it local filters, input controls. And you can see very clearly quarters, months, and revenue, just to make it easy. Run my query, no big deal. And up comes Excel file, but we have a problem. Typical of Excel files, and you bring them in. As Webi brings in any Excel file with many, many, many columns, we only had 3, but I've seen it with many, many columns. One column at a time, starts at the first column, and does the old dimension or measure. Well, it's Q and a number, has to be a dimension. Column number 2, all number. Oh, great, I'll get off easy, I'll make it a measure. Whoa, wait a minute. I don't want it to be a measure, I want it to be a dimension. Webi says, too bad. I picked it up automatically, you didn't tell me, so I took care of it for you. And projected revenue. Typical user will go back through the process of going outside of Webi. They'll delete the one that they had already imported, go back to Webi, or outside of Webi, go to the original Excel file, reopen it up, and try to pass it as a text. Webi said, nope, one-stop shopping. I can do it all for you. So we need to go back to the query panel for that Excel file. It's just like another query. Okay. And if you notice, it's got a qualifier here on the left side. It's that or properties type. So if I click on month, it actually allows me to change this. Okay, which is kind of nice. Won't do that with the universe, but we'll do it with the Excel file. I would have renamed the Excel file. I would have called query 1 Excel, by the way, as well as part of that. But as we go through this process, and lo and behold, there it is. There it is. My available objects show up on the left side. Normally, I like to arrange those by query rather than by alphabetic. There's only one query, so it doesn't matter, and so on down the line. So that Excel file is viewed just like any other one. Okay. So if I edit the query, I can go back to edit that one, or I can go back and add another one. My other options would be to add another query from whatever combination I needed to as well. So I could bring in eFashion, which if we have time we'll do, but bigger thing right now I want to talk about is there's my Excel file. and it's available. Those columns are treated like any other column and now available to me for reporting. Okay. Now, what happens if the Excel file gets updated? The million-dollar question. When they first released this in 4.1 SB2, I was in there very, very quickly, and the first thing I discovered was you couldn't update the Excel file. You had to create a new report. There was an issue. When I talked to the development staff, they said, oh yeah, so they promptly put in a fix for it to allow us to be able to go in and update as we needed to do. We needed that functionality. Well, the way they did it wasn't what I would have considered the easiest way to do it. It takes a little being careful, but nevertheless, there is a way to do it. So what happens is we created the Excel file up front and we imported it. Well, that's great, but now it's been updated. So what you don't want to do is go back to the Documents tab that it was on. This is a mistake people will try to edit it here. That's wrong. That's not going to do it. All right. So they go outside of Excel and they re-import it and try to put it back in under the same name. That's not going to work either. So what you have to use is what's called the Organize Replace feature. However, to do that, you need to think this through. When you make the changes to the Excel file and you try to bring it back in using the Organize Replace, there's two types of changes that you could be doing to the Excel file. And you might have done both. Number one is the obvious one. I'm updating the data. I add more rows of data. Certain rows of data get deleted. Some of the individual values based on certain dimensions might have changed, whatever. But it's all basically changed to the data only. No structural change. The second one, I make a structural change. I add 2 more columns in. Maybe I delete a column. I insert a column in between other columns. The point being, I'm changing the physical structure. So what would happen if we did that here? We're actually going to do that right now. Let me go back outside of Webi. So I'm going outside. Let me go find my original source. You've got to make sure you really do a good job of managing this part of it here to make sure you get the same file that you originally had for it. We'll go to stoplights where I have it stored. There's eFashioned XLSX. Usually every time I do a demo, I leave the updated stuff in. The next time I delete it out, next time I put it in. But notice we're doing this outside of Webi, nothing to do with Webi. We're going into Excel and we're adding in, we're actually going to add in an extra data. Whether they updated the data itself didn't matter. So we're going to take the next column and call it actual, just to put some data in there. And I'll do the old quick and dirty one where we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, 7, 6. And we'll put in an extra column of data. It's called actual, or better yet, let's call it actual data. Hit the old enter key. And I'm going to save it. I'll close it out, but I know it's going to save it for me when I do that. Whoop, wrong one to cancel out of. I need the Excel one here, and it'll just do the automatic. It'll do the save for me. And I made a physical change to the file. I just didn't update the data. I physically changed the file. So now what do I do? I said, well, and you could do this even in the middle of a report. You don't have to have it closed out. I got to go back to Documents. I need to find the Excel file that I need to update. Got to be careful. Now, if you're storing this in a public folder that's being shared by other people in a special secured folder, some of you may not have the ability to do an Organize Replace because of security. You want to make sure they know who's controlling the file so we don't clobber it even by accident. So now what I need to do, notice I'm inside of Webi in the folder where it's stored. And I do a right-click, Organize, Replace. Now, don't ask me where they came up with this one. It's like the add to merge, that little teeny tiny little add to merge button you have to use when you're merging something into where it's already been merged. I don't know where they came up with it, but here's what it does. Organize, replace. Replace goes out. It says, okay, where is it? Point to it. Make sure it's the same one. And it remembered, and it's an eFashioned XLS, but that's been changed. So I'm doing this. Okay. Now I'm going to go down to the right-hand side, say let's do a replace on it from that particular point. If you want to continue, better come up. You're about to overwrite it, if all goes well. That's the place where once in a while, I'll get a funny format error with XLS files. In XLSX, I'm not, so that was why I was warning you about that. From my experience, that's what I've seen happen with that one. So technically now, if you think about it, we got some interesting things going on here. The Excel file outside has now been updated. It's the same one that was just imported here, but what's in my document, however, is not reflecting this data. So I said, okay, well, I told you could mix and match. You could have it open while you're doing it. So now what you got to do is come in and we need to update the document. And here's where you make the fatal mistake. because there was a structural change. I cannot do a refresh on it because it's not going to pick it up, and more often than not, it will actually create an error condition and clobber the report, in which case I close it out without saving it as my only option for that one because I don't want to clobber it, all right? But what do I have to do? If it was just an update of the data itself, additional rows of data, values being changed, 0 structural changes, you can hit the refresh buttons right here and everything updates. Game, set, match, you are done. But we added columns. We could have deleted columns. We could have moved them around. So we have to do it a little differently. We have to go back to the query panel. Then we have to go to the Excel file tab, which we're already on since there's only one. Usually I'll bring in a couple queries from universes and bring this in next to that, next in line, but it doesn't matter. And you notice we have the edit settings button down here. And notice what my data looks like, quarter, month, projected revenue. If I hit the edit settings button here, it comes up. And again, if there's multiple sheets, you'd have to add multiple queries using a different sheet each time when you come in. And it does tell you where you got it from. So if you lost track of which Excel file it does tell you that here. Right? If I do an OK, came back immediately in the query panel or the pseudo query panel, and all of a sudden there's actual data. That's good news. That means you did it correctly. The organize replace, when you brought it in, you did that, but you didn't just do a refresh and roll the dice. You took the time to go back to the edit query panel. You went to the Excel tab. You clicked on the edit settings, and there it is. Now I'm all set to go. I run the query. And I would not have had to do that if it had been just a data update. Now, notice it did not put the new object in. That's like taking a query that's been previously run, adding 2 or 3 more objects and rerunning it. They always show up in the available objects, and they're never displayed. So you should be used to that. That's very consistent with how it works. We'll bring in the projected in here like this, drop that into place, and now we've been able to bring all of our data in exactly the way that we want. And look how careful we were in the process. Now, as you see this and you start thinking about it, you say, well, I'm going to build up some really nice production-like reports with the Excel file being updated each week. The million-dollar question, can I schedule it and update while I'm scheduling? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, no. This is a manual process only. Trust me, before anybody raises the question, will they ever do it? I've been pushing the development staff very hard on it. I think it's a reasonable request. I haven't seen it in 4.3 yet, but maybe we will down the road. It would be nice, but you know, who knows? Who knows if they'll give us the ability for the scheduler to do it. It would sure be nice to be able to do that. So let's do this real quick. We got it built, so we're good to go. Now we'll go back out to the query panel real quick. Let's add a new query. Could be Excel file. We'll just do a quick one from my universe only. Whoopee fashion. The moment you know you're bringing in multiple queries, your little light bulb in your brain goes on and said, okay, what do I need for common dimensions to link my multiple queries together? I need common dimensions, usually plural. Well, we're doing a quarter and month in Excel file, so all I need for this one is quarter and month. Now, I know what you're all saying. Real life, you would have had year, quarter, month. Yes, but we simplified it just for this example, so we didn't have a monster set of list of values that we had to deal with as well. So I created my second query here. Now, because I'm running HTML and at the query panel level, you have to do a right-click rename. Okay, it's the only way you can do it. It won't let you double-click only at the query panel level. And I'll call this one E-Fashion. I should have renamed the first one Excel, but that's okay. You see what happens with it. Okay. Now I can run just the selected query. So I say, we'll run just the E-Fashion query. I need to run the other one. The other one's already been run. I haven't changed it. That's backdoor way where you could screw yourself. If you updated the Excel and then run another query one up here, you could potentially screw it up that way. So be careful. Okay. So there's my first query. There's my second query. Now I need to combine the results together. Which report what I'm going to use to do that? Why don't we use the Excel file as my base, the first one we created, and let's just bring in the additional measures from the second one. So we'll just do a sales revenue and a quantity sold and a margin and a discount. We'll add those additional objects. This is why we're doing this in the first place. I have measures that coming in from multiple sources that they need to pull together. All grand totals. Another light bulb in your brain goes off, and this one's in a different area and says, hey, we haven't merged yet. We haven't linked. What are we missing? So a couple different ways you can do that. Pretty cool. The most common way people are used to doing things is off of the Data Access tab. There's a Merge button. And one at a time, we can't group these yet that I've seen, but maybe sometime. I select 2 of them, the OK button lights up, I undo it. I do it a second time, and I go back in for month. You got to merge them all up. You might have added 6 or 8 queries, and you're merging them all at the same time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I've got month and month. Fashion month, the query number, no, it's not month. I want quarter. Well, I did want month and month for this one. It's already merged the quarters together. Let me cancel out. I don't know what happened there. I don't like what it did, but we're going to come back in, and we'll pick the month from the first query and the month from the second query. Hit the OK button again, and now they're merged together, and all my values line up. You get that built-in automated roadmap. And it's important to rename your queries because look what it tells me. Here it says query 1. It would have been nice if it would have said Excel. Here it says eFashion for the second query. So I know, and I don't need query 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not going to do the job. But let's get rid of the merging. We'll get rid of these one at a time. We're going to remove, unmerge it. It's going to ask me to verify. Sure you want to unmove it? Yep, I do. And let's get rid of quarter. Get rid of that one as well. We're working on through the process. Second way you could have done it, and this is kind of unique to HTML. Well, first of all, you could have done this. I could have selected quarter and quarter over here. Okay, done a right click and done a merge that way. That's always been there. But what if I am running HTML version, not the Java or applets version, but HTML, and I just happen to have linked those 2 together by chance, okay? And I go up here on the right side and I hit the merge button. But the merge didn't pop up. Where's the merge dimension window with the multiple queries? It didn't need it. It recognized it, did it automatically for us. Same for month. If I coincidentally happen to do month, okay, right click, merge, or I can just hit the merge button up here. They're merged together. Okay. Now they're all brought into the picture, and now I've got all of my merge dimension categories out here. The only other thing that I need to remind you about with this that's important is right now the quarter and month are from query number 1. So we're using query number 1's base set of data values. So if that file only had quarters 1 and 2 in it, all my document would reflect would be months, quarters 1 and 2 in the corresponding months. If I were to turn around and make it the quarter and month from eFashion, and they only had quarters 3 and 4, all I'd see is quarter 3 and 4 data. It's almost like it's an outer join with the perspective of the dimensions plural you picked. And that's why you never want to cross them over. You don't want to have quarter from query 1 and the month from query 2. You don't want to do that because of the way the data could be represented. But what if you want all of them? What if I want, it's almost like a union all. So if I took the merge dimension quarter, here, the parent one, and I drag that over the top of the quarter column in the document, in that report block. Now I got to do matching month for it from the same place. I stick the month in there. Whoop, I put it in the wrong place. That's good, thank God for the unlimited undos. I love that feature. Use it a lot in 4.3 with stuff that I'm doing. Put it into there. And now what will happen is you'll see a complete set of all of the values across all of the queries that comprise it, which is almost like a union all. You can almost think of it that way. You have that level of granularity. You have that level of control. That is really cool. And I could have brought in another Excel file. Now, one thing you got to watch out for now is if I bring in any more queries and I try to merge, the merging is not going to work up here, and it's not going to work up here. You're going to have to do it down here. And I don't have anything to do that with, but what you would normally do is highlight the quarter, for example, holding the control key down. You would then select the quarter from the corresponding query that you just brought in. When you do a right click, you'll see a little add to merge button. And that's adding to a merge that's already there. Now, save yourself the headache that many of my users do that have never been through any formal training. Say just delete all the merges and redo them all over again, adding the additional one in. Well, I got news for you. I got a customer out there with roughly 70 queries in a document, and they don't want to be unmerging a bunch of them to remerge later on. Add to merge takes care of it. So hopefully it gave you a good little lesson in how to manage your Excel files, where to store your files, how to share the files, most importantly, how to bring it in new versus bring it in to update using the organize replace. I will continue to follow up with the Paris developers. I owe Samuel an email right now on some of the requests that have come in from you guys across the different webinars that I've been doing. And I'll be asking about the automatic way of updating Excel files if possible. It is not in 4.3 right now. I've been through that extensively and all that, and it's not there yet. Let's do any questions anybody has.
Yes, we had one come in here. When merging the common elements, can you just merge them with one element and display all elements, question mark? or you can only display just the merged elements.
I'm not sure from the question what they mean. You mean both of these? What's the merge dimension category? You're only going to want one of those in there in your report. You have to pick which one you want it to be. It wouldn't make sense to have two of them, and you only want one for these. For up here, here's my combined report where I pulled all of the measures from all of the two queries together to go in there, and then I made sure that I brought in the quarter and month because those are the primary dimensions that I need to link these two together, these two queries, and so that the numbers all synchronize properly. So just added a quarter a month, making sure that these are from a single one. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I haven't received a response from them yet, but we'll take a look and see here. They respond. But other than that, there are no other questions at this time, Michael, so thank you.
Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity again, and thank you all for coming out. Sorry we didn't come out live. I know a lot of you missed my Panera trips that Paul and I always have for breakfast, and wish I could do it virtual and deliver you all one of our famous bagels, but